Good morning again. I'd like to welcome everyone to today's webinar. We have a large group on with us, and we have folks on from Florida to Texas, from Oklahoma up to Wisconsin, and so lots of folks on with us. Glad to have everyone. Because we have so many folks, we have your phone lines muted. If at any point during this conversation or this discussion you have a question, look over to the right-hand side of the control box of the webinar, and you'll see a place that says questions. Type your question in there. We will get the question to Dr. Bruening, and we will try to answer all questions during the course of the webinar. And if we can't get to your question during the course of the webinar, we'll make sure to get an answer back to you as soon as the webinar is over. Also, just to let you know, at the end of the webinar, a short poll will come up that will ask if you'd like resources, and that includes the references for the information that you'll see during the course of the presentation, as well as some more of the information. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, to get started, because we do have quite a few folks on, we wanted to start with a quick poll just so you can see where you stand in regards to other folks. So let's launch our first poll. The poll is going to ask you, where does your district or your school stand in regards to the Common Core standards? If you'll take a quick second and just click on this, and I'll share the results with you in just a second, and it'll give you an idea of the, quite a few folks that we have on with us from around the country. Where are folks in regards to the Common Core standards? And we'll leave that open for another, let's say, 5 seconds, and then we'll close it, and I'll share that with you. We're getting great participation. We're nearing 100%, in fact. So we'll close that right now, and then let's share the results with you. That way you can see what's going on with other folks. And as you'll see, 73% of folks out there are just now beginning to implement Common Core standards. About 18% say that it's been discussed but no action taken. And we've got a couple of adventurers on with us that have no idea that this is new to them. So I want to welcome everyone from there as well. So let's go through the Common Core standards. Let's talk about how you can use these new standards and how you have tools already available to you to do well with them. And with that, I want to introduce our speaker. Dr. Pam Bruening has worked with us here at LEAPS for a long time. She has done many things for us at LEAPS, including leading the charge to help make Common Core standards something that is relevant to LEAPS and readily accessible. Dr. Bruening has served at very high levels in school districts, especially Collier School District. She's now the CEO of Progressive Bridges, a consulting company that really specializes in behavioral initiatives as well as opportunities for professional development, staff development. So just a tremendous resource centered around initiatives such as the Common Core standards. And so with that, I want to hand over the webinar to Dr. Bruening. Dr. Bruening, welcome, and as you get started, we already have some questions coming in. Let me segue to you with a question, and this is from Natchitoches, Louisiana. Why is there no set of Common Core standards for our special needs population? And similarly, there's another that says, how will our special needs population be impacted by Common Core? And so, Dr. Bruening, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Jay, for that great introduction. And that's a common question, and I think that's because we're used to seeing that diversity reflected in our standards. And you'll note with the Common Core that that isn't there, at least not right at this time. And the reason for that is because the Common Core is really written for all students. And so when the group of people that got together and wrote those really thought about the diversity, thought about how we're going to meet the needs of all students, recognize that we want all students to be career and college ready, regular ed students as well as special ed students. And so they put all of those together. So of course I know the big question hanging out there is, how on earth are we going to do this? And as we go through the webinar, elements of that will be pointed out to you as far as maybe what they were thinking and why they did this and why they did that. But having said that, there are going to be some alternative types of standards out there for a very, very select population of very specific cognitive disabilities, the very most severe. So we're talking only about 1% that would really be looking at those kind of standards anyway, and it's my understanding that those are being written right now. So really our focus will be on the Common Core as a whole for all students, and then how, as we go through that, can we diversify and differentiate to meet the needs of all students. And again, that'll be part of this webinar all the way through. So let's just move right on. And when we're talking about, again, the purpose of the Common Core, the whole idea was to bring greater rigor and greater critical thinking to what we're doing with students, to have them go deeper into what we're doing. We know that preparing students now for the world that they're entering, with everything changing so quickly with technology, it's really important that they are thinking critically, that they can take information as quickly as it comes to them, think it through, compare sources, and analyze things, and then go back out and do thinking all the way through that. A lot different than 20, 50, 100 years ago. So one of the purposes of the Common Core State Standards is really to support teachers in helping them to understand the forwards and backwardness of these standards, what comes before, what comes after, so they can see the breadth of everything and help their students along that path all the way through. The other focus is really going deeper with fewer things, and I'm sure many, many teachers are excited about that idea, wanting to spend more time and seeing the value in doing deeper thinking on fewer main concepts. So who actually wrote those Common Core State Standards? And that's a very interesting question that many people ask. Well, 48 states really contributed their best standards to the writing of the Common Core. And they got together educators from all over the place. They got together administrators. They got together professionals from the field. So all different fields in the work world. All of these people contributing and looking at what is really needed in the work world and the career and college world. And then educators thinking, here, what are we doing now? What can we do better? What are our best standards? What causes students to think deeper? And those are the things that they put together. So the word common is really thinking about collaboration, and that's really exactly what took place here. It wasn't one state standards or the best standards of one state. It was all states contributing together. And then the focus of it, the core, really speaks to focused, and they are focused standards, again, really looking at deeper standards and fewer concepts. And then the whole idea that the state, they all belong to the all states now. And that's the other really unique thing, is that whole idea that now we have standards across the United States. We have a lot more opportunities for national collaboration, and many, many teachers are excited for this. This is when teachers were asked in a poll, what are you hopeful for with the Common Core, the coming of the Common Core? These were some of the things right here that they said. We mentioned the depth and the breadth, but the other neat thing is the whole idea that they are student-centered. And while we've been talking about becoming student-centered for a long time, with the old standards, they were written in a very teacher-centered manner. So these standards, again, are written much more student-focused, in that students are doing that thinking, and the teacher is more of a facilitator. Again, the standards, we're talking about some common principles of the Common Core, and this is just a quick summary of what we already talked about. And the whole shift here is getting students ready for the career and college world, which really meets the needs of all students. One of the biggest things here is that as students are reading, they're going to become more like detectives, and then they're going to be reporting, whether it's in speaking, writing, any of those things, as an investigator. So they're really taking a more analytical look at information from various sources. And they'll be required to do all those skills that you see there, the analyzing, the synthesizing, the evaluating, preparing, arguing, persuading. And again, if you think about our media world and you think about technology, those are the exact things our students are doing right now, whether it's part of Facebook or part of some other programs that they're working on. Many of them are doing those skills right now. Those are things they have to do in the real world, and in the work world it's like that. They're going to be using many different formats and lots of different types of organizations. So that whole idea of thinking and owning their learning is huge in this whole shift to the Common Core. One of the things that people are asking is, well, how are we going to make an impact with this Common Core? Because it is different, and it is causing students to think more deeply and with more rigor than perhaps we are right now. Well, the answer to that, and I know this is a very global and general answer, but you'll see, I'm sure, in the months to come and the year to come and the years to come, the whole idea that response to intervention, something that we've had in place for a while now, the whole idea of universal design for learning, which is new to many people, but those two elements put together are really framing this for us in how we're actually going to make the impact using these Common Core standards. So let's just take a very quick look at some of these Common Core standards, and this is a very quick summary shot. Many of you are very familiar with these already as you've been looking at them according to the poll and you're starting to use them. So you know these shifts and you know the idea that research is something that's going to be a big part of these standards, the whole idea of mastering their language, the reading, the writing, and how to intertwine those things and how to make sense and how to argue and how to support themselves and how to use different texts and compare and contrast different things. The academic vocabulary is a very big part of this too, because we're talking now about these standards, these language standards across the board in all disciplines. So that pulling of academic vocabulary from all over the place, not just a very select group of vocabulary like maybe in the past. The whole idea of strengthening the integration of reading and writing so students see it as a combined process, and argument and the written and oral preparation that it takes to do those things. A lot of collaboration is built into these standards, whether it's researching on your own and then collaborating with someone else to come up with an argument. Again, those are real world things that students are doing in a college classroom as well as in the career world. The whole idea of speaking and listening in multiple settings, and we've had those standards before in the past, or many states have. However, a lot of it was more informal, less formal perhaps, and what they weren't maybe required to do is go deep. They were maybe just reporting on things with speaking and listening. Now we're talking about really thinking and arguing and analyzing an author's point or several authors' points or a speaker's point or multiple speakers' points in a discussion, and thinking through how to prepare for a discussion and really bring your point forward, using problem solving, and that whole idea, all of that takes some organization and leadership skills as well. So looking at information, drawing the new conclusions, and so forth. That's going to be a big change for many classrooms, I believe. Of course, we have the literacy and other disciplines, and I don't want to leave them out, but I do want to say that across the board, it's that deeper content area knowledge required, and the language in all contents. Don't want to leave math out either. Math is also, again, going to the fewer concepts, the greater depth and practice, the idea of procedural fluency, as well as understanding the concepts, whereas before we might have leaned more toward just the fluency, a little less toward the conceptual understanding. Now that's coming back so that we can really make sure we understand why we think what we think and why we do what we do in the math world. And again, of course, the application of math outside the classroom is a lot greater in these sets of standards here.
Well, one of the reasons that we really wanted to have Dr. Bruening do this is there's always the question of where do you start? And whether that's RTI, UDL, and now with the Common Core is how do you begin? Where do you start? Well, one of the things that most of the folks who are on today are LEAPS subscribers, folks that have LEAPS as a resource. And we're going to spend a few minutes now with Dr. Bruening going through how LEAPS is actually a resource for you. And if you'll go ahead and advance the slides, Dr. Bruening, what you'll see is that LEAPS has been correlated. Every lesson, whether that is from the K to beginners, the lessons for kids who are in that middle level, the lower maturity lessons, or all the way up into the higher maturity level lessons. When you go to your curriculum page and you choose the curriculum that you want, every single lesson in LEAPS is now correlated to the Common Core standards. And this was something that we actually brought Dr. Bruening in to do. That's why we're so excited to have her here with you today. But when you go in there now, you'll find rubrics and then the Common Core correlation for every module, every lesson, and where they correlate to on a grade-specific level. So it's a tremendous resource for you, and it'll give you the opportunity of really using the behavioral and social and emotional approaches that you're using, whether that's Tier 1 across a classroom, Tier 2 in a small group, or even in a one-on-one setting, you can correlate those lessons back to these Common Core standards, and those correlations are there for you. So back to you, Dr. Bruening.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, you know, one of the most exciting things when we were doing these correlations with LEAPS was the realization that there's a difference between aligning Common Core and having effective Common Core with curriculum. And let me just for a second explain the difference there. Aligning means that it goes right along with, but effectiveness also with the Common Core speaks to, does it go deep enough? Is the rigor enough? Is the, are the activities really supporting those standards at a higher, deeper level? And I was very excited as I was doing it to realize it certainly does in LEAPS, whether it's the beginners or the lower or the higher maturity. So here you see a beginner's lesson. You'll see the vocabulary there, so there's some academic vocabulary right there given to you, and then you'll see the correlation right next door. The neat thing is that LEAPS has been written in with such an effective pedagogy that it has impact. It causes students to think already because of the discussion, because of the way that the lessons are organized, because of the way that they're written. LEAPS is actually addressing the social emotional skills, obviously, but at the same time, it is addressing the speaking and listening standards, especially, and of course the writing standards if you choose to respond to those lessons as part of your classroom activity. So let's just think about it again. Here's again the lower maturity lessons. And we have, again, the deeper thinking, the questioning. They're asking themselves questions. What would I do in this situation? How should I respond to my friends? Those are all analytical questions, application, evaluative questions. What would be a better way to approach a situation? Again, all of those things is decision making. And the neat thing is while they're doing a LEAPS lesson, they're actually getting real life practice with a real problem that they're probably going to face or already have faced. So we're talking about preparing for that, you know, situation. As you use your LEAPS lessons, you can extend to some research in some of those areas to bring in, again, more academic vocabulary and preparation for a stronger discussion in those areas. Again, written right with those standards. That's exactly what we're talking about here. The whole idea of sitting and discussing with classmates and hearing differing views requires respect and listening and problem solving as they work together to analyze, would this be a better way to handle this than this? So again, these lessons lend themselves perfectly to what we're trying to do with the Common Core as well with the social emotional skills. And one of the neatest things that we sometimes overlook with the LEAPS lessons that is so important for kids in connecting with school is the connection that they form with teachers when they're having these discussions, because it is different. It is motivating in that it's something they care about, friendships, for example, rather than math for the time being. And so they learn to see their teachers in a different light as they're discussing these things together. That whole act of collaboration and discussion together is building that positive classroom culture, school culture, depending on how you're implementing LEAPS across your school or across your classroom. So all of those things are promoting the very same social and emotional behaviors that are actually ingrained or required as part of Common Core. And I think that's where some of the hurdle is for many people with the Common Core is they might be thinking, my students cannot certainly discuss like this. Maybe only because they haven't had the opportunity before. And LEAPS provides that practice at the same time then as teaching them social emotional skills.
One other thing to think about, and as I was visiting with Dr. Bruening and she was sharing her presentation with me, is that we wanted to make sure that folks know that from a data standpoint, you know, the Common Core is fantastic, and many of the analytical and evaluative skills that Dr. Bruening talked about are skills that can sometimes be somewhat difficult to measure. Well, don't forget, when you have your LEAPS license, you can come to us, or you can yourself put together reports centered around what you're doing from a Tier 1 standpoint with classroom challenges, what you're doing from a student assessment standpoint, actually using that profile to create incoming measurements for your starting points for actually working with the kids, then doing post-participation measurements and determining progress. You can automate your fidelity reporting, and that's for an individual, for a class, for a school, or for the district. Then you can use the comparison reports within LEAPS to determine your progress reporting. So the really big thing with all of this is that as you teach lessons that not only align to the Common Core and put you from that regulatory standpoint in alignment with where you need to be academically and structurally, as you do those things, allow LEAPS to collect the information in the background that creates your fidelity and progress reporting, and that can be automated back to you, and then it becomes a seamless or holistic approach that really lets you focus on what you do best, and that is teach. Takes you out of constantly having to do reports, interpret data and all that good stuff, and turns you back into just teaching.
Yep, that's exactly right, Jay, and that's an excellent point to remember, because all of this goes together to build the fidelity of implementation and help us know that what we're doing works. When they have been talking about implementing the Common Core now for several years, and there have been many surveys that have gone out to teachers saying, what is it that you need in order to have support in implementing the Common Core? And there's a lot of concern about that, because this is a huge change across the board. So many people are tentative about how they're going to approach that whole professional development area. But these are what teachers said. These 4 things are what teachers said that they felt that they needed in order to make this work. And you'll note the first one really quickly is that they wanted it to be teacher-led. And that requires teacher leaders to step up and to be given the opportunity to really take the Common Core and start utilizing it and working with their peers and collaborating and working together so that it is not such a monumental task. And LEAPS is a perfect example of something that can provide that. LEAPS is very simple to use, and when your school purchases it, every person in the school has the opportunity to use LEAPS. So it makes for great collaboration. It really comes right from the teacher in that respect. So this is a great way to start there. It also provides helpful curricular tools. We have meaningful professional development. We have 24/7 professional development pretty much online here with LEAPS, as well as my company can go out and work with you too. We've got the appropriate assessments that are required, again, to measure what we're doing to see, is it making a difference? And with LEAPS, we have those behavior rubrics now, and that's one way we can measure, are the LEAPS lessons making a difference when I learn about respect and I'm actually applying that in a classroom? Am I behaving differently, and how can I measure that over time? So those things are in place in addition to the pre and post test. Of course, we recognize, I think everyone recognizes, the strong systemic needs with implementing the Common Core. And these are things that have, are under discussion, are being worked on continuously, and I think everybody really realizes, especially I would say the last one, the job-embedded professional development through the teacher teams. It really has to be, the professional development has to become that way. And that's one of the things, again, Progressive Bridges is working to do with professional development to make us a little bit different. So in conclusion, if...
Dr. Breen, real quick, we've had some questions coming in. Can I throw a couple of these at you real quick? One is that will there be an alternate curriculum aligned to the Common Core standards? My understanding is that Common Core is a college or career-based curriculum.
Right, and the whole reasoning of that group that wrote the Common Core is that all students need to be ready for career in college, regardless of disability, because they'll have some kind of job for the most part. Now, the one exception to that is there will be an alternative curriculum for about 1% of the population, which would be our most significantly or most severely cognitively, delayed people or people that have those kind of disabilities. But that's a very small percentage compared to what the percentage of students now who use alternative assessment, which is about 3%. So you'll note there that there's a 2% difference in what they're saying, and this was Arnie Dunking saying this actually in an interview, is that 2% they feel like can become part of Common Core because of the way Common Core is written, because of the way we have universal design for learning and technology now. We have the ability to differentiate in order to have those kids included. And the other side to that, of course, is always the testing side. I don't know. Did you get any questions about testing at all?
Well, we did have one that said, will there be an alternate curriculum aligned to Common Core standards? Sorry, I read that one. The other one was, how will Common Core standards affect students who are on an alternate curriculum and take alternate assessments? So that was one that came through.
Right. Yeah, that's what I thought, because usually the two things go together, and that's a very good question. One of the things that they have done differently, and we'll see here in the next slide, but they've actually they have computer adaptive testing for the Common Core now. So their point is that the computer will adapt the testing to the student and the student's differentiation needs right up front, and so that will allow that extra 2% of students to be able to be included with the Common Core and still make it valid and reliable. Before we go to that slide, though, let's just really quickly note that many people look at the standards as a starting point, but really that's not how we want to look at them. The standards are really our staircase to actually get to that seamless college and career readiness. What we're really looking at as the starting point is what we're doing now. Good teaching, the strong accountability, those kind of things, the best practices, that's the starting point. And then we work toward that staircase and get up there with the Common Core standards that go deeper with more rigor. And again, just to note here, you'll see the testing of the Common Core. It's going to be released in 2013-14, and only that 1% would take the alternative testing. That's what that's saying there. And again, how are we going to make this happen? And there's just another note there for you. That whole idea of RTI and UDL working together is how we're going to find success with this Common Core. And I know, again, that's a very blanket statement, but that's something you're going to hear a lot more about in the next months and years. So if we look at the testing timeline, you can see here we've got the new assessment being field tested in 13-14, and then full implementation with both instruction and assessment based on the Common Core in 14-15. That's the timeline that we're working in. So you can see we're right on track, and it looks like a lot of people have a good head start with things. Just a quick note about the Common Core testing. Again, here are some details. It is going to be designed to provide immediate feedback, which should be helpful to a classroom teacher. And again, the way we have technology now and the way we have with UDL, most people are starting to use formative assessment frequently, and that's what we need to do in order to know, is our differentiation working, how do our students need what, and what can we do next in order to know where we're going. So we've got the accommodations built into the testing through adaptive testing, the computer adaptive testing of the Common Core, to meet a wider range of students. That's the way that's been written and the way that's designed to be. And a quick note that not all states are not required to shift to this new test, though most probably will, because most have adopted the Common Core state standards. They are not required to shift to that test. Jay, do you want to take it back?
Yeah, absolutely, and thank you, Dr. Bruening. One of the things we want to end with is make sure that you have access to the resources that we've talked about today. And in that, let me launch a quick poll. This will allow you to tell us what you would like us to send you, something that would help. And that includes things such as resource pages, so the references that Dr. Bruening used throughout, or if you see some other things in there you'd like, for example, some of the LEAPS lesson plans or the video of what you've just seen. If you want some other folks to hear and see what you've just seen, we can send you the online for that. Some more information about progressive bridges, more information about LEAPS. So I'll leave this open for about another, let's say, 10-15 seconds. We're actually having really fast participation on this. Then I'll put up the closing information. And so as we begin to end here, I want to thank Dr. Bruening for her time. I want to thank everyone who is on with us. We had a huge group on today, and I appreciate that. If you have any questions at the end of this, please don't hesitate to call. Don't hesitate to reach out to us, and you'll see our contact information there. I'll leave this information up for a little while. Don't hesitate to reach out. We can answer any questions that you have, and that's Dr. Bruening or your LEAPS team. The correlations are there for you. We appreciate Dr. Bruening making her time available to us this morning. We appreciate the time you've given us here. If you have any questions, type those in and send them to us. We'll get an answer back to you or reach out and let us know. So thank you. I hope you have a tremendous day. I hope you have a tremendous start of the summer and a good ending of the spring. So good luck, good teaching, take care.